This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy. We go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
So imagine for a moment that you're sitting at a table,
Yeah.
right? And you are trying to solve this massively complex jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, like one of those 1,000-piece ones that just take over your entire dining room.
Exactly, one of those.
Yeah.
And you have been staring at these pieces for, hours, maybe even days at this point.
Right, and you're getting that specific kind of headache.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're trying absolutely everything to make them fit together. You're, turning the pieces around. You're trying to force the edges to connect. You're squinting at the picture on the box.
Looking at it from like every conceivable angle.
Right. But nothing is locking into place.
Yeah.
The picture just remains completely fragmented.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
It is. It's this intense mounting frustration. And the reason nothing is working, the reason you feel so stuck, is because you've actually been holding the completely wrong piece in your hand this entire time.
Which happens a lot more than we'd like to admit.
It really does. And, when it comes to the puzzle of domestic abuse in our society, we do this constantly.
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
We stare at the situation, and the question we almost always ask, like the piece we just keep trying to force into the puzzle, is, why doesn't she just leave?
Yeah, it is the default societal reflex, isn't it?
It really is.
The moment the topic of an abusive relationship comes up, whether it's, just a casual conversation between friends or a news report or even sometimes within the actual legal system, that is the immediate pivot.
The scrutiny just goes right to the victim.
Instinctively. Almost magically, it turns toward the victim's behavior and the victim's choices.
Right. But today, on this deep dive, we are taking that puzzle piece and we're throwing it completely off the table.
Good riddance.
Yeah. We are flipping the lens entirely to look at the actual source of the problem. So instead of interrogating the target of the behavior, we're going to ask a much darker, much more complex, and frankly, a much more uncomfortable question.
Which is, why does he do that?
Exactly. Why does he do that?
And to answer that, we have to do something that might feel a bit, transgressive. We have to go inside the mind of the abuser.
Which is not a fun place to go.
No, it's not. But we're going to dissect the hidden logic, the deep-seated entitlements, and these highly specific, really methodical tactics that actually drive abusive behavior.
Right.
And in doing so, we're going to unravel exactly why our standard societal responses, things like traditional psychological therapy, couples counseling, the family court system, why they so often fail completely when they encounter these dynamics.
It's a heavy topic, but it's so necessary. And to guide us on this deep dive, we've got an incredible stack of source material.
We really do.
Yeah, it's anchored by two incredibly powerful perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
The first is this raw, totally unfiltered transcript from a court-mandated group therapy session for convicted domestic abusers.
And reading those is, it's quite an experience.
It's jarring. You are going to hear the actual words these men use as they reflect on and, as we'll see, aggressively deflect from their own violence in real time.
Yeah, it's a chilling experience because you really see the mechanics of denial operating in plain sight.
Right in front of you.
Right. And to make sense of those mechanics, our second major source is the foundational work of Lundy Bancroft.
Oh, Bancroft is amazing.
He really is. He's a recognized expert who spent over 30 years working in exactly these types of programs. He actually co-directed a program called Emerge.
Right, which was the first of its kind, wasn't it?
It was the very first counseling program in the United States specifically created for men who batter. But crucially, and this is what really separates Bancroft from almost everyone else in his field, he maintained constant, ongoing, independent contact with the victims of the men he was counseling.
And that dual perspective is everything, right?
It's the whole ball game.
Because he isn't just sitting there listening to the story the abuser tells in the therapy room. He is actively cross-referencing it with the lived reality of the partner back at home.
Precisely. That verification loop is exactly what allowed him to pierce through the psychological camouflage.
Because they're really good at hiding it.
Oh, incredibly good. Without that reality check, it is dangerously easy for even trained professionals to be completely taken in by the narratives these men construct.
Okay, so let's bring you, the listener, right into the gritty reality of that group therapy room.
Let's do it.
I want you to really picture the scene with us because the context here is vital. We are talking about like a community center basement or maybe a sterile clinic room.
Fluorescent lights humming overhead.
Yes, that horrible buzzing sound, a circle of plastic folding chairs. And you've got a trained facilitator sitting there with a clipboard.
And it's important to remember, the men sitting in this circle have not volunteered to be here for self-improvement.
Right, this isn't a wellness retreat.
Not at all. They have been arrested, they've been processed through the criminal justice system, they've stood before a judge, and they've been legally mandated to attend this multi-week program.
Usually as a condition of their probation or their sentencing, right?
Exactly. They are essentially a captive audience, and everyone in the room knows exactly why everyone else is there.
There are no secrets.
Right. There is no ambiguity about the baseline requirement for admission to this circle. You had to commit an act of violence or severe intimidation to get a seat in that room.
Okay, so the facilitator opens the session by going around the room, and he asks each man to just introduce himself and state plainly what he did to get there.
Which seems simple enough.
Right. It seems like the most basic starting point for accountability. Just say what you did. But when you look at the transcripts of what actually comes out of their mouths, it is mind-bending.
The immediate linguistic gymnastics are fascinating.
Gymnastics is the perfect word for it.
Because the language they use is not accidental, right? It's a highly evolved, totally unconscious defense mechanism. Let's look at the first example from the transcript.
Yeah, let's do it. We have this man named John. It's his turn to speak. He introduces himself to the group and he says, and I'm quoting here, "Had a little altercation with my wife and grabbed an arm, that's the physical abuse that I committed."
Okay, so if we break down the syntax of that single sentence, there is an enormous amount of psychological distancing happening there.
It's packed.
It really is. First, notice the framing. He calls it a little altercation.
Little.
Right. Before he even describes the physical act, he is manually shrinking the scale of the event for the audience. He is instructing the room on how they should measure it.
He's saying, don't make a big deal out of this guy.
Exactly. And then look at the phrasing, grabbed an arm, not I grabbed her arm. He says, an arm.
That part really stuck out to me. An arm. It's so weird.
It's the most telling detail in his whole introduction. By using the indefinite article "an" instead of the possessive pronoun her, John is separating the body part from the human being attached to it.
Wow. It totally depersonalizes the violence.
It really does. It turns his wife from a real person he assaulted into this disembodied object that just happened to be in his general vicinity.
And then the way he ends it, too. He says, that's the physical abuse that I committed. It sounds incredibly clinical.
Like he's reading off a legal statute rather than describing a terrifying moment where he physically overpowered the woman he married.
Yeah, it's like he is a third-party observer just reporting on a minor traffic violation. Well, an arm was grabbed, officers.
Exactly. It's totally detached.
Okay, so let's move to the next guy in the circle. His name is Paul.
Paul.
Yeah, Paul's a piece of work. Paul says, I'm here because I dumped my wife's purse out on top of her. And she called the cops, didn't want to press charges. But the DA picked it up as being a violent crime.
So Paul's strategy is slightly different from John's, but it's equally evasive.
How so?
Well, Paul completely sidesteps internal accountability by shifting the agency entirely onto the legal system.
Right.
Listen to the narrative he just constructed for the room.
Right, he makes himself the victim.
Yes. He just did this mundane, albeit slightly messy thing, dumping a purse. It was the district attorney who magically transformed this completely normal household moment into a violent crime.
He makes it sound like this bizarre bureaucratic overreach. Like, can you believe these guys making a big deal out of some spilled lipstick?
Exactly. He's positioning himself as the victim of an overly aggressive justice system. This is a classic sociological phenomenon where individuals externalize their locus of control.
So it's never their fault.
Never. By focusing entirely on the DA's action, Paul avoids having to ask himself the difficult questions.
Like, why did I feel entitled to dump a purse on my wife in the first place?
Right. And what level of fear was she in that compelled her to dial 911 in her own home over a dumped purse? You don't call the police over a minor mess unless you're terrified of what's coming next.
But by making the system the aggressor, Paul gets to remain the protagonist in his own story. The put upon every man.
Exactly. It's a very effective shield.
But I have to say, the absolute masterpiece of evasion in this transcript comes from a guy named Robert.
Oh, Robert.
Yes, and the context here is crucial. Robert is on his third time taking this multi-week class. He has sat through this exact curriculum twice before.
He knows all the buzzwords.
He does. So he describes an argument with his wife, and he says, I got mad, and I threw the remote, our TV remote, and it busted, and the batteries flew out and hit her on the arm. She had a bruise.
And then, the kicker.
Right? A moment later, he clarifies, but it wasn't intentional, like throwing it at her.
It's amazing. Suddenly, the inanimate objects in the room gain their own agency.
The remote busted.
And the batteries flew out.
The batteries just took flight. They sprouted tiny little wings and went on a rogue, autonomous mission across the living room.
Seeking out her arm all on their own.
I read this and I thought, this is like someone totaling a car by driving it straight into a giant oak tree at 90 miles an hour. And when the police arrive, the driver points at the crumpled hood and says, well, officer, the tree just jumped right out into the middle of the road. What was I supposed to do?
That is a perfect analogy. The level of separation from his own physical, kinetic action is just staggering.
It really is.
It requires a profound level of cognitive dissonance, or really magical thinking, to animate inanimate objects just to avoid saying the words, I threw a hard plastic object directly at my partner's body.
And what's interesting is that the facilitator in the room actually catches this.
They have to. That's their job.
Right. The facilitator steps in and challenges Robert's framing directly. The facilitator tells the group, intentions are relevant, but if you make it smaller in your mind, it makes the violence less important, and you're less likely to use your tools to stop.
That is such a critical intervention.
It struck me as such a crucial mechanical insight into why this specific language matters so much.
Well, the facilitator is highlighting the direct neurological link between how we describe our actions to ourselves and how likely we are to repeat them.
So it's not just about ego.
No, minimization isn't just about saving face in front of the other men in the circle. It is a functional requirement for recidivism.
Let's unpack that. Why is it a requirement?
Because if you shrink the act down to a little altercation or a rogue battery that flew out on its own, you don't feel the internal moral alarm bell that tells you your behavior is aberrant or dangerous.
You don't feel like a bad guy.
Exactly. And if the violence isn't a big deal, well, then you don't need to deploy any coping mechanisms or anger management tools to stop it from happening again.
That makes total sense. But I am struggling to understand the internal reality of these men here.
It's confusing, for sure.
Like, if they know they're in a court-mandated class for violence, if they know the facilitator has literally read their police reports and everyone in that room knows exactly what they are capable of, why do they still minimize it so aggressively?
Seems pointless, right?
Yeah. At that point, the gig is up. Are they actively lying to the group, or have they actually brainwashed themselves?
That is the core paradox of the abusive mindset. And Bancroft spends a lot of time dissecting this in his work.
And what does he conclude?
It's a complex synthesis of both, really. But primarily, it is about maintaining their own internal framework of reality. You have to understand that to admit fully and unreservedly that you made a calculated, conscious decision to instill physical terror in the person you supposedly love.
Yeah.
If you admit that, you have to look in the mirror and view yourself as a monster.
And the ego simply cannot tolerate that reflection.
Never. The human psyche will build massive labyrinthine structures of denial to avoid collapsing under that kind of moral weight.
So it's self-preservation.
Completely. So if you convince yourself that the remote just slipped or that the DA is just out to get you for no reason, you get to protect your self-image. You get to be the reasonable guy who was just pushed a little too far by an unreasonable situation.
Which opens up a completely new avenue for us to explore. Well, if these men are constantly minimizing their actions, if they're perpetually shrinking their violence down to accidents and misunderstandings, we have to pull back and ask, what is actually driving the behavior in the first place?
The root cause.
Exactly. And the answer that Lundy Bancroft arrived at, after thousands of hours sitting in those exact rooms, it completely shatters the fundamental paradigm of how society views domestic abuse.
It really does. Bancroft's most profound realization, the thesis that his entire body of work rests upon, is this. Abusers do not have an anger problem.
I want you, the listener, to really sit with that for a second, because it sounds completely counterintuitive.
It feels wrong, doesn't it?
It feels entirely wrong. When we hear the word abuse, the immediate culturally programmed image that pops into our heads is a guy with a red face, a bulging vein in his forehead, screaming, maybe punching a hole in the drywall because his internal pressure valve just exploded.
We view it as a failure of emotional containment.
Right, we psychologize it. We assume his emotional regulation circuitry is just broken. We think of it like a kettle boiling over.
But Bancroft points out a critical distinction. The abuser doesn't have a problem with his anger. His anger actually works perfectly fine for him.
Because it gets him exactly what he wants.
Exactly. The actual issue is that he has a profound problem with her anger. He has a problem with her autonomy.
Oh, that's a huge shift.
It is. At his core, he believes that she fundamentally does not have the right to be angry with him, to disagree with his decisions, or to stand up for her own needs.
So it's not about a loss of control at all. It's about entitlement.
Pure entitlement.
And Bancroft uses an analogy in the source material to explain this entitlement that is so provocative. It honestly made me stop reading and just stare at the wall for a minute to process it. He talks about how these men absorb their worldview from the culture around them.
Yes, the generational conditioning analogy.
Walk us through that.
To understand the depth of this entitlement, Bancroft suggests imagining trying to counsel a generational slave owner in the mid-1800s.
Oh.
I know, it is a heavy, uncomfortable comparison, but it perfectly illustrates the mechanics of deeply ingrained, socially reinforced entitlement.
Right, because he argues that abusers learn very early in life, whether it's from their fathers, their peer groups, or just the, patriarchal water they swim in, they learn what kind of emotional, physical, and domestic service they are naturally owed by a female partner.
They are conditioned to expect a certain level of absolute deference.
And if you were to sit that 45-year-old slave owner down and say, hey, the way you are operating is fundamentally wrong. You cannot own people. You cannot extract this labor from them.
The slave owner wouldn't break down in tears of remorse.
He wouldn't have this grand epiphany and say, oh my goodness, I see the error of my ways. How could I have been so blind?
Not at all. His reaction would be genuine, burning, righteous outrage.
Because he feels robbed.
Exactly. He would feel completely victimized by your intervention. He would look at you and say, what are you talking about? This is my inherent right. This is how the world is structured. If I don't have this, who is going to grow my crops? You are trying to steal my property and upend the natural order of my life.
So when we map that back onto the domestic abuser, it's an issue of deeply held values. It's not an issue of emotional management.
Precisely. The abuser's violent actions, his yelling, his intimidation, these are not spontaneous explosions of unmanageable emotion. They are calculated enforcement mechanisms.
Enforcement mechanisms, like a penalty for breaking the rules.
Yes. When his partner stops providing the service, he feels he is inherently owed. And that service could be anything. It could be having dinner ready at a specific time, offering unquestioning obedience during an argument, providing constant emotional validation, or sexual availability.
When she stops providing that.
He uses abuse to enforce the contract he believes exists between them. It is a terrifyingly methodical assertion of control to bring his environment back into compliance with his expectations.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second here, because I know people listening to this are thinking of specific examples that seem to contradict this entire idea.
Sure, lay it on me.
We constantly hear people, even professionals, blame underlying trauma for abusive behavior. They say, well, he was abused as a child, so he has a trauma response.
Right.
Or the abuser himself will say, I just saw red. I blacked out. I completely lost control. Or, and I think this is the most common one we see in the literature, the abuser will look at his partner and say, you are the only person in the entire world who makes me this mad. I don't get like this with anyone else.
Oh, yes. That phrase.
Doesn't that specific targeted rage point to some sort of unique emotional trigger between those two specific people?
That is the exact trap that so many well-meaning people fall into. When we hear an abuser say, you're the only one who makes me this mad, our instinct is to think, wow, there must be a severely toxic dynamic between them triggering a deep psychological wound.
Sounds like a bad mix of personality.
Exactly. But Bancroft completely inverts that logic. He argues that the phrase, you're the only one who makes me this mad, is actually the ultimate definitive proof of the abuser's calculated entitlement.
Wait, really? Walk me through the mechanics of that. Why does that prove calculation rather than a trigger?
Because true psychological disorders or genuine physiological anger management issues do not possess borders.
Borders, okay.
They do not respect geography, and they do not respect social hierarchy. If a man truly had a broken emotional regulation system, if he genuinely could not control his temper when he felt frustrated, that inability would bleed into every single arena of his life.
So he would be screaming at his boss when he got passed over for a promotion.
Absolutely. He would be throwing a keyboard at his coworker. He would be punching the barista who accidentally put regular milk in his oat milk latte.
Because he can't control it.
Right. If you have an impulse control disorder, you lack impulse control across the board. But he doesn't do any of those things.
In fact, often he's the exact opposite. He's the guy who is incredibly charming at work. He's the guy who is always willing to help a neighbor fix their lawnmower.
Oh, he's the life of the party at the neighborhood barbecue.
Right.
Exactly. The counseling program Emerge had a dark but really accurate catchphrase among your staff. I never met a batterer I didn't like.
Wow. That is chilling.
It is. In public spaces, these men are intensely curated. They are highly capable of pristine emotional regulation when it benefits their social standing or their livelihood.
So the abuse is a choice.
Yes. The abuse is specifically surgically reserved for the intimate partner behind closed doors. And why? Because she is the only person in his life he views as his property. She is the only one who owes him that complete subservient service.
So if the explosive rage only happens in one specific location with one specific target and never in front of witnesses who could hold him accountable,
That is not a loss of control. That is a choice. It is a strategic deployment of violence.
that changes the whole perspective. It redefines the violence itself, which actually leads to another crucial point from Bancroft's work: how we as a society define what physical abuse actually is. Because the bar is set incredibly high in the public consciousness, isn't it?
It's way too high. We live in a society that tends to think if a closed fist hasn't connected with a jaw, leaving a visible mark, well, then it's not real abuse.
We just call it a bad relationship.
Right. People relegate extreme intimidation to the category of a toxic relationship or poor communication. But Bancroft defines a batterer in much broader, much more accurate terms. He states that physical abuse is any deliberate step taken to put a partner in physical fear.
So the focus isn't on the physical impact. The focus is on the installation of terror.
Yes. The mechanism of control is fear.
So practically speaking, it's not just the physical strike. It's him standing in the doorway during an argument, physically blocking the frame so she can't leave the room to cool down.
Which, legally speaking, is false imprisonment. It is a physical assertion of power.
It's pinning her wrists to the bed during an argument. It's taking her phone out of her hand so she can't call for help.
Or it's driving the car erratically and dangerously fast while she's in the passenger seat begging him to slow down.
Oh, that's terrifying. Or, it's the classic trope we see in movies that is often downplayed.
Yeah.
Punching a hole in the drywall right next to her head.
That drywall example is perfect for illustrating the underlying psychology here. When he punches the wall, the message he is sending is not, oh, I am so overwhelmed by my feelings that my fists are acting on their own.
No.
The actual calculated message is, look at the sheer kinetic force I can generate. Look at the damage I can do to this solid structure. You could be next.
It's a threat.
It is a highly effective, calculated threat to her physical safety that achieves the goal of silencing her without leaving a single mark on her body that the police could photograph.
Okay, so if the core issue here is an entrenched value system of ownership, entitlement, and strategic intimidation, rather than a treatable psychological disorder or lack of communication skills, how does a standard psychological professional even begin to handle this?
That is the million-dollar question.
What happens when these couples interact with standard therapeutic systems?
This is one of the most vital takeaways from Bancroft's research. In the vast majority of cases, standard psychological treatments handle this dynamic terribly.
Terribly.
And I don't use that word lightly. In many instances, applying standard therapeutic models to an abusive dynamic is actively dangerous for the victim.
Let's walk through a very common scenario to understand why that is. Picture a couple. Things have deteriorated at home. There is constant yelling, there is walking on eggshells, there's an undercurrent of fear. The tension is just unbearable.
We all know couples like this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the most logical, socially praised step they can take? They decide to go to couples therapy.
It's the responsible thing to do.
Exactly. They sit on a comfortable couch across from a well-meaning licensed professional with a soothing voice and a notepad. To the outside world, and even to the victim herself, it seems like the mature step.
But as Bancroft outlines, in the context of domestic abuse, couples therapy is a catastrophic trap.
Why is it a trap?
To understand why, you have to look at the fundamental psychological framework that couples counseling is built upon. Standard couples therapy operates on the premise of systems theory and shared responsibility.
Right, the idea that a relationship is an interlocking system. It takes two to tango.
Both partners contribute to the negative dynamic. Both partners have valid grievances, and both partners need to adjust their communication styles to find harmony.
And for a normal, healthy relationship that is just hitting a rough patch, maybe they are stressed about finances or struggling with intimacy or arguing about how to parent their kids, that framework of mutual compromise is fantastic.
It works beautifully for normal conflict.
But for an abuser,
For an abuser, that framework of shared responsibility is pure, unadulterated validation. It essentially hands him a megaphone with a professional endorsement.
oh wow.
Because what has the abuser been telling the victim behind closed doors for years? If you just communicated better, if you just respected my authority more, if you just listened to me the first time, I wouldn't have to get so angry. You are causing my reactions.
And now they are sitting in a clinical setting. And a licensed professional with a degree on the wall is turning to the victim and saying, well, let's explore that. Let's look at how your tone of voice, Susan, might be impacting his feelings of respect in the household.
It's an absolute nightmare scenario for the victim. The therapist is unwittingly reinforcing the abuser's core delusion that his violence and intimidation are natural reactions to her behavior rather than unilateral assertions of his entitlement.
So the therapist is treating an asymmetry of power as if it were a symmetrical communication problem.
Exactly. And Bancroft gives a specific example of this in the source material that is so jarring. It physically made my jaw drop.
Yeah, share that one.
He talks about the common therapeutic maxim that all feelings are valid, and he points out that no, actually, in the context of an oppressive dynamic, not all feelings are valid.
Because some feelings are based on entitlement.
Right. He describes a case study where an abuser was genuinely deeply hurt emotionally because his wife attempted to kick him in the groin while he was strangling her.
Wait, really? While he was actively strangling her?
Yes. It is the perfect, horrific distillation of the abuser's completely inverted mindset. He is in the middle of committing a lethal, felonious act of violence. He is literally cutting off her oxygen supply.
And she's just trying to survive.
She, acting on pure biological survival instinct, attempts to strike a vulnerable area to defend her own life. And his primary psychological takeaway from that event is that his feelings are hurt because she physically rejected him by fighting back.
That is insane. And the terror of applying standard couples therapy to this is that a traditional therapist, strictly operating on the all feelings are valid and let's hear both sides model, they might actually sit there in a session and say, okay, he feels hurt and rejected by the physical act of being kicked. And she feels hurt and traumatized by the act of being strangled. Let's validate both of your emotional experiences and try to find a middle ground.
It is an absurd and inherently dangerous clinical equation. You cannot equate the emotional discomfort of the oppressor with the desperate survival tactics of the victim.
No. It's like, okay, it's like trying to mediate a bank robbery.
I love this analogy.
Imagine a hostage situation ends, the police show up, and instead of arresting the bank robber, they sit the robber and the terrified bank teller down in a mediation circle.
With a nice mediator.
Right. And the mediator says, okay, Mr. Robber, I hear that your feelings were really hurt when the teller hit the silent alarm instead of trusting you. And teller, I hear that your feelings were hurt when he pointed a loaded shotgun in your face. Teller, what could you have done differently with your body language to make the robber feel more respected during the heist?
We would look at that and say the mediator has completely lost their mind.
But this happens in couples counseling every single day.
It does. And the tragic reality is that this exact same flawed dynamic, this inability to recognize the asymmetry of abuse, plays out on a much larger, much more destructive scale within the family court system.
Who talk about family courts?
And that is where the consequences for the children involved become truly devastating.
Let's dig into the family court aspect, because the source material makes it abundantly clear that abusers know exactly how to game these institutional systems.
Oh, they are experts at it. When these relationships finally fracture and the couple ends up in family court fighting for custody of their children, the judge will often order psychological evaluations for both parents to determine fitness.
Which sounds like a good idea on paper.
On paper, yes.
Yeah.
But as we discussed earlier, the abuser generally does not have a diagnosable clinical mental illness in the traditional sense. He doesn't have schizophrenia, he isn't having manic episodes, he has a values problem.
It is a deeply entrenched entitlement problem.
Exactly. And there is no DSM-5 diagnosis for entitled misogynist.
So what happens in the evaluation?
Well, the abuser sits down with a court-appointed psychologist. He puts on his nice suit. He deploys that charming, rational, highly curated public persona that we talked about him using at work.
The I'm a great guy routine.
Right. He speaks calmly. He expresses deep concern for his children. and he passes the psychological evaluation with flying colors. The evaluator notes that he is grounded, oriented, and emotionally stable.
Meanwhile, the victim is sitting in that exact same evaluation room, maybe later that same day, but her internal state is entirely different.
She is a wreck.
She has been gaslit, terrorized, sleep-deprived, and systematically psychologically dismantled for years. She is frantic. She is terrified that the court is going to hand her children over to the monster she just escaped. She might be suffering from complex PTSD.
And we should define complex PTSD or CPTSD here because it's crucial for the listener to understand the difference.
Yeah, please do.
Standard PTSD is often the result of a single terrifying event, like a car crash or a combat incident. Complex PTSD develops from prolonged, inescapable trauma over months or years. It fundamentally alters the nervous system.
It rewires you.
Yes. The victim is stuck in a state of hypervigilance. Her amygdala is constantly firing. She might speak rapidly, jump from topic to topic, cry unpredictably, or exhibit extreme anxiety.
So to the untrained eye of a family court judge or an overworked evaluator looking at these two parents side by side, who looks like the unstable one.
She looks crazy. She looks erratic, borderline, or hysterical. And he looks like the calm, collected, long-suffering victim of an unstable woman.
So backwards.
The courts are built to evaluate documented facts and clinical diagnoses. They take mental health evaluations very seriously. But they often struggle to process allegations of coercive control or emotional abuse, especially if the abuser was smart enough not to leave a mountain of police reports or hospital records behind.
So the abuser effectively weaponizes the very systems designed to uncover the truth therapy in the courts, using them as instruments to further isolate her, discredit her, and maintain his control over the children.
This ability to look perfectly sane, to look completely rational and grounded to the outside world, while methodically operating machinery designed to make the victim look and feel completely unhinged, it's insidious.
Bancroft identifies this as perhaps the abuser's most potent weapon, doesn't he?
He does. He calls it defining reality.
Defining reality. That sounds like pure, unadulterated psychological warfare.
Because it is. It goes far beyond physical violence or name-calling. Defining reality is about the abuser aggressively usurping the victim's own perception of what is objectively true. It's a direct assault on her basic cognitive functioning.
How does that actually work mechanically? I think people hear terms like gaslighting thrown around a lot on social media, but how does an abuser systematically overwrite someone else's memory of an event?
It is a process of attrition that relies on extreme, unshakable certainty. The human brain naturally relies on social cues to verify reality.
We look to others to confirm what we know.
Exactly. If someone says something to us with absolute unwavering confidence, our brains subconsciously afford that statement a degree of credibility, even if it contradicts our own memory. The abuser will speak with intense manufactured certainty about things that are objectively false.
Like what?
He will confidently lie about a conversation that happened 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
They'll say, I never said I was going to pick up the kids. You're making that up.
Or he'll speak with total authority about external facts to instill helplessness. Like, if you call the police, they will arrest you because you scratched my arm when I grabbed you. That's how the law works.
Yes. He delivers these fabrications with such supreme confidence, such an utter lack of hesitation, that the victim's brain naturally introduces doubt. Am I misremembering? Did I hear him wrong? Is he right about the law?
And the source material highlights a specific, incredibly destructive tactic they use alongside this false certainty to accelerate the breakdown, which is ridicule.
Oh, ridicule is devastating.
Bancroft emphasizes that society drastically underestimates the psychological damage caused by ridicule. We focus on screaming and hitting, but we ignore the smirk.
Ridicule is uniquely destructive because it bypasses the defenses we usually mount against outright aggression. If someone screams at you, your body produces adrenaline, you can get angry back or you can flee. But ridicule targets your fundamental sense of dignity and intelligence.
It makes you feel small.
Exactly. If the victim pushes back against his false reality, if she says, no, that's not how I remember it, you are lying to me, he doesn't just disagree. He hammers her with intense, humiliating ridicule. He mocks her intelligence. He laughs at her memory.
I know you're crazy.
Right. He rolls his eyes and speaks to her like she is a toddler. There you go again, getting hysterical over nothing. Your memory is a joke.
Over time, that kind of constant dripping ridicule acts like acid. It eats away at her cognitive confidence.
And we have to view this within the broader context of his strategy. The abuser is almost always working simultaneously to isolate her from her support networks.
He wants her alone.
He creates conflicts with her family. He makes it miserable for her friends to come over, so she doesn't have a sister or a best friend to call and say, hey, this thing just happened. Am I going crazy, or is he lying?
The isolation is the incubator for the madness.
Precisely. When he successfully isolates her, his voice becomes the only authoritative voice in her environment. The neurology of cognitive dissonance dictates that when the only input you receive every single day tells you that you are stupid, that you are blowing things out of proportion, that your memory cannot be trusted, it is a biological inevitability that you will eventually internalize that narrative.
You just start believing it.
Bancroft points out something very important here. This deterioration is not a sign of weakness in women. It is the fundamental documented mechanism of how interrogation, brainwashing, and psychological torture work on the human mind. Anyone who isn't a highly trained elite operative will eventually experience cognitive fracturing under that kind of sustained, isolated psychological assault.
So if you are listening to this and you recognize this pattern in your own life, or you recognize it in the life of someone you love, how do you fight back against a distortion field that is that powerful?
It's incredibly difficult.
How do you hold on to your basic grip on reality when the person who controls your daily environment is speaking with 100% authority about a fabricated world?
The antidote that Bancroft provides is incredibly practical, though it requires immense caution and secrecy. It's the practice of secret journaling.
Literally just writing things down as they happen.
Yes, but the key is the physical act of documentation combined with absolute secrecy, because the abuser's primary defensive mechanism is denying history. He relies on the malleability of memory.
Right.
If a victim has a hidden physical record of events documented in real time with specific quotes, dates, and times, it serves as an objective anchor. The physical act of handwriting bypasses the cognitive dissonance.
So when he comes to her 6 months later and says with absolute certainty, I never threatened to take the dog away, you're crazy, she doesn't have to rely on her battered memory to fight him.
Right. She doesn't even have to argue with him out loud. She can quietly go to her hidden notebook, read her own handwriting from that specific Tuesday, and prove to her own brain, no, I'm not crazy. I'm not blowing it out of proportion. It happened exactly as I remember it.
It validates her.
It doesn't necessarily stop his behavior, but it builds an internal fortress protecting her cognitive reality.
Okay, so an adult mind with established critical thinking skills might be able to implement a strategy like secret journaling to hold on to their sanity. But my mind immediately goes to the most vulnerable people in this scenario.
The kids.
What happens to the children living inside this house? What happens to the kids who are marinating in this intense psychological distortion field before their brains, their prefrontal cortexes, are even fully developed?
That is where the abuser's tactics cross the line from destructive to truly insidious. Because the abuser's ultimate goal regarding the children is almost universally a strategy of divide and conquer.
Let's break that down. Why would he want to divide the family unit? You would think an abuser would want a peaceful, quiet house where everyone just obeys. Why intentionally create chaos and division between the kids and their mother?
Because any system of oppression, whether it is a dictatorship in a nation state or a dictatorship in a living room, fundamentally fears solidarity.
Solidarity is a threat.
Absolutely. If the mother and the children form a unified, tightly bonded front, they are significantly harder to control. They can support each other emotionally, they can validate each other's reality, and they possess the collective numbers to potentially resist his tyranny.
You could team up against him.
Right. To maintain absolute centralized control, the abuser has to systematically destroy that solidarity. He has to ensure that everyone in the house is looking only to him for validation, relying entirely on him and distrusting each other.
So he begins to subtly insert himself between the mother and the children.
He will subtly, or sometimes very overtly, start turning the kids against her. He understands exactly how to manipulate developmental psychology.
Give me an example of how he does that.
He will whisper to a 5-year-old, Mommy's always so grumpy, she doesn't really like playing with you, but Daddy does. Or he will tell a vulnerable teenager, your mom doesn't understand you, she's selfish, she's out spending her money. He will intentionally undermine her parental authority right in front of the kids.
That's devastating.
If she tells a child they can't have dessert because they didn't finish their homework, he will walk into the room, laugh, hand the kid a bowl of ice cream, and tell the kid, don't listen to her, she's crazy.
So he teaches the children, through daily repetition, that their mother has no actual power and deserves no basic respect.
It achieves two goals simultaneously. It makes the mother's daily life exponentially harder and more isolating, and it centralizes all the power and affection onto him.
He gets to be the hero.
He becomes the fun parent, the benevolent dictator, or the ultimate unchallengeable authority, while she is constantly exhausted, undermined, and cast as the villain in her own home.
Which puts the mother in a completely agonizing catch-22. I mean, think about the biological instinct of a mother. If she sees a man actively manipulating and brainwashing her children, her natural, desperate instinct is to grab the kids and tell them the truth.
Of course it is.
She wants to say, listen to me, your dad is lying to you. Your dad is manipulating you. He's an abuser. But if she actually says those words out loud to the kids, what happens?
It results in total disaster for a few reasons. First and foremost, the physical danger. If the abuser finds out she's directly challenging his narrative to the children, he will view it as an act of treason.
And he'll retaliate.
He will punish her severely and likely punish the children for listening.
So it's a safety issue first.
Yes. But second, it is a psychological backfire. Children possess an inherent, powerful biological desire to love and defend their parents. Even if their father is terrifying, even if they witness the unnice, they desperately want to believe he is a good person.
It's just how kids are wired.
If the mother launches a direct character assassination against the father, the kids will likely experience immense internal conflict. They will get defensive, they will push the mother away, and counterintuitively, they may actually align more closely with the abuser to protect their idealized image of him.
So she has to sit there, effectively gagged, watching this man slowly overwrite her children's reality, knowing that if she speaks the direct truth, she will make it worse.
She cannot launch a direct frontal assault on his character, no. But Bancroft reveals a brilliantly subversive, indirect workaround for mothers in this impossible situation.
I found this to be the most hopeful and fascinating part of the entire deep dive.
It really is brilliant. It is a method for installing a cognitive firewall in the children's minds without ever mentioning the abusive father's name. It utilizes a concept similar to inoculation theory in psychology.
Okay, how does she do it?
You do it by teaching the children how to read and analyze advertising.
Let's really explore this mechanism. How does teaching a 7-year-old about a toy commercial protect them from the psychological warfare of an abusive parent?
To understand why it works, think about what advertising fundamentally is at its core. Advertising is a socially acceptable form of manipulation.
That's true.
It is an entity, a corporation, using charm, bright colors, catchy music, and false promises to convince you that they have your best interests at heart. They want you to believe their product will solve your problems and make you happy, when in reality, their singular underlying motive is to extract something valuable from you, your money.
They are using charm and misdirection to control your behavior for their own benefit, which is the exact operational definition of what the abuser is doing to the child.
Precisely. The mechanics are identical. So the mother can use television as a safe, neutral training ground. She can sit on the couch with her kids while they watch a cartoon. A commercial comes on for a highly sugared cereal or an expensive new video game.
And what does she say?
She casually starts asking them analytical questions. That's interesting. Why do you think the announcer is talking in that super excited voice? Do you think those kids on the screen are really that incredibly happy just because they got a new pair of plastic sneakers? What does the sneaker company really want us to do right now?
She isn't lecturing them. She is leading them to the conclusion. She is teaching them critical thinking. She is teaching them to look behind the curtain of charm to find the hidden motive.
Exactly. She is training them to recognize the specific mechanics of manipulation in a low-stakes environment. She is giving them the cognitive vocabulary to understand a profound life lesson. Just because someone is smiling at you, and just because someone is telling you exactly what you want to hear, does not mean they are telling you the truth.
And it certainly does not mean they care about your well-being.
Exactly.
And from a developmental standpoint, kids naturally absorb this because kids love to feel smart. They love to feel savvy. They love the feeling of being in on the trick that adults are trying to pull on them.
And once that critical thinking software is installed and running in their brains, once they know how to spot charm being used as a weapon for personal gain, they will organically, almost subconsciously, begin to apply that analytical framework to their own interpersonal lives.
Even with their dad.
Especially with their dad. When the abusive father comes to them with a shiny toy and whispers, "Your mom doesn't love you. She just wants to ruin our fun. I'm the only one who really cares about you." The child's brain will start to process that interaction the exact same way it processes a sketchy, manipulative commercial.
The alarm bells will go off. They will start asking themselves the questions they learned on the couch. Why is he saying this in that tone of voice? What does he really want me to do right now? Is he trying to sell me something?
You give them the shield of critical thought, and they will raise it themselves when the arrows start flying. Bancroft also recommends a specific children's book called A Bargain for Francis for kids under the age of 6.
Oh, I know that one.
It's a classic, seemingly innocent story about badgers having a tea party. But beneath the surface, it masterfully teaches young children how to spot when a friend is utilizing deceit and manipulation to get their way. It is essentially covert survival training disguised as a bedtime story.
It's brilliant, but when you zoom out and look at the sheer, overwhelming mental load of this reality, it is staggering to contemplate.
It's exhausting.
The victim is managing her own moment-to-moment physical safety. She is secretly journaling, hiding notebooks in the house, just to maintain a basic grip on her own sanity. She is covertly training her children in psychological warfare resistance using badger books and cereal commercials.
While walking on eggshells.
She is constantly anticipating his fluctuating moods, managing his bottomless entitlements, taking the brunt of his rage to shield the kids, all while being systematically isolated, degraded, and told she is worthless.
The amount of executive function and pure resilience required just to survive Tuesday is monumental.
Which brings us full circle, right back to the very first question we discussed at the top of the show. The puzzle piece that society refuses to put down. With all of this horror, all of this exhaustion, all of this pain, why doesn't she just leave?
And here is where we must finally flip the paradigm. Because to truly understand why she stays, we have to rationally examine what it actually requires to leave.
Let's do that.
Let's do a thought experiment. Let's ignore domestic abuse entirely for a second. Let's just talk about a normal, non-abusive, but perhaps slightly unhappy relationship that has run its course. What does a person need to successfully pack up their life and end a normal relationship?
Okay, let's build the checklist. Let's call it the checklist of freedom. First and foremost, practically speaking, you need money.
Money is huge.
Leaving costs capital. Living alone is almost always significantly more expensive than splitting rent or a mortgage. You need a security deposit for a new apartment. You need first and last month's rent. You need money for a moving truck. And you need your own independent bank account that the other person cannot access.
That's pillar number 1, financial independence. What else?
You need a robust network of social support. You need friends who can physically help you move your couch on a Saturday. You need a sister or a parent you can cry to on the phone at 2 a.m. when you are doubting your decision. You need a community to validate that you are making the right choice for your life.
Pillar number 2.
Social support. Third,
You need a baseline level of self-confidence. You need to believe in your own competence. You need to trust that you can handle the logistics of life on your own, paying the bills, navigating a new neighborhood, maybe re-entering the workforce. You need the internal energy and executive function to execute a massive life transition.
pillar number 3, self-confidence and competence.
Literally.
Finally, and maybe most importantly, you need the fundamental internal belief that you deserve better than what you currently have. You have to believe that you are a person of worth, that a happier life is possible for you, and that you won't just die alone and miserable if you walk out the door.
Okay, so our checklist of freedom is money, social support, self-confidence, and the belief that you deserve a good life. Now, I want you to hold that checklist up against everything we have just learned over the last hour about the specific, methodical mechanics of domestic abuse.
Right.
Look at those 4 pillars. What does the abuser systematically target and destroy?
Oh, wow. What's a direct match? It's an exact blueprint of destruction.
Yes. Financial control is almost universally present in abusive dynamics. He closely monitors the bank accounts, he restricts her access to credit cards, or he actively sabotages her employment by showing up at her work or making her late so she gets fired. So, pillar 1, the money, is gone.
And we talked about how he intentionally isolates her, creating conflict with her family and driving away her friends, so his is the only voice she hears. Pillar 2, the social support network, is gone.
We discussed the weaponization of ridicule and gaslighting. He spends years convincing her that she is stupid, incompetent, hysterical, and entirely unable to function in the real world without his guidance. Pillar 3, self-confidence, is completely decimated.
And he degrades her daily, attacking her physical appearance, her worth as a mother, convincing her that no one else would ever want her, and that she is incredibly lucky he's willing to put up with her at all.
Huh.
Pillar 4, the belief that she deserves better, is entirely eroded.
It is the cruelest, most tragic irony of this entire dynamic. The very four pillars you must stand upon to execute an escape from a relationship are the exact four pillars that the abuse is scientifically designed to demolish.
That's wild.
Therefore, the main obstacle to leaving an abuser is the abuse itself.
It fundamentally rewrites our understanding of the victim. It's not that she's weak. It's not that she secretly enjoys the drama, as some horrible cultural stereotypes suggest. It's that her escape tools have been methodically located and dismantled by a predator.
Exactly.
Society looks at the battered victim and thinks, my God, it must be so much easier to find the motivation to leave an abusive relationship than a normal one because it's so terrible. But it's actually 180 degrees the opposite. It is infinitely harder to leave an abuser, precisely because the abuse has stripped you of the cognitive, financial, and emotional resources required to walk out the door.
And we haven't even touched on the grim physical reality of the situation. Statistically, and law enforcement will verify this across the board, the moment a victim attempts to leave is the most dangerous time in the entire life cycle of the relationship.
That's when it escalates.
That is the window when domestic homicides are exponentially most likely to occur. Why? Because the abuser realizes that his entitlement is being permanently revoked. He realizes he is losing his property, his ultimate control, and his reaction is lethal rage.
Or, tying it back to our discussion about the family courts, she stays because she has accurately assessed the risk to her children. She knows that if she leaves, the abuser will don his suit, manipulate the legal system, pass the psychological evaluations, and likely gain partial or even full, unsupervised custody of her children.
She stays to act as a human shield. She absorbs the violence so her children don't have to face him alone.
So, given this monumental wall of obstacles, if you are listening to this and you have a friend, a sister, a coworker who you suspect or know is trapped in this situation, how do you actually tangibly help them? Because the visceral, loving instinct of any friend is to grab them by the shoulders, shake them, and yell, you have to leave and pack your bags, come to my house, get out today.
And Bancroft explicitly, urgently warns against doing exactly that.
Why shouldn't we tell them to leave?
If you order her to leave, or if you issue ultimatums like, I can't be friends with you if you stay with him, you are doing two profoundly damaging things. First, you are acting as just another controlling force in her life. You are dictating her reality and taking away her agency, mirroring the exact dynamic of her abuser.
You're trying to save her by bossing her around.
Second, when she inevitably isn't ready or isn't financially able or is too terrified of the physical consequences to leave, she will feel a profound sense of shame. She will feel like she failed your expectations.
And what does shame do?
Because she is ashamed, she will stop answering your calls. She will pull away from you, and you will have unwittingly become a participant in the abuser's goal of total isolation.
So what is the alternative? How do you be a lifeline without pulling them under?
You focus entirely on rebuilding those four pillars we just discussed. Your entire mission is to secretly resource her. You focus on building her agency. You don't say, leave him. You ask open-ended questions. What do you think you should do? What do you need right now? I trust your judgment.
You empower her.
You actively validate her reality to combat the gaslighting. When she says, he told me this didn't happen, am I crazy? You look her in the eye and say, you are not crazy. I remember that happening. Your memory is good. The way he treated you is not okay.
You help her quietly set aside money if possible. You become a safe repository for her secret journal or copies of her important documents.
You become an unshakable, judgment-free node of social support. You make it abundantly clear that no matter how many times she goes back, no matter how complicated it gets, you are not going anywhere. You leave the door wide open so that months or maybe even years down the line, when she finally has the financial resources, the cognitive clarity, and the safe window to run, she knows exactly whose hand is waiting in the dark to pull her up.
That is incredibly powerful, and it gives us all a functional role to play. Let's zoom out and wrap this up because we have been on a serious, profound journey today. We have essentially decoded the abuser's playbook, page by page.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We've learned from the men in that fluorescent-lit group therapy room that minimization, shrinking the violence down to flying batteries and DA conspiracies, is a required cognitive tool to protect their own ego and ensure they never have to take accountability.
We've learned from the foundational work of Lundy Bancroft that domestic abuse is not a loss of emotional control, it is not an unmanageable trauma response, and it is certainly not an anger management issue.
Not at all.
It is a terrifyingly methodic, strategic assertion of control born out of a deeply ingrained generational and societal entitlement. It is the belief that he owns her.
We've seen how our standard societal systems, the ones we trust to fix these problems, like couples therapy operating on shared blame and family courts susceptible to curated charm, often completely fail to recognize this fundamental asymmetry of power, resulting in the validation of the abuser and the further traumatization of the victim.
We explored the devastating, silent psychological warfare of defining reality. We looked at the neurological impact of the weaponization of ridicule and the impossible, agonizing choices mothers face when trying to protect their children's minds from a manipulator without escalating the danger.
And most importantly, we finally put down the wrong puzzle piece. We understand now that looking at a victim whose money, friends, and self-worth have been systematically destroyed and asking, why doesn't she just leave, is fundamentally blaming the victim for being successfully dismantled by a predator.
We know now why he does it.
Yes, because he believes he has the absolute right to, and because, too often, the systems around him allow him to get away with it.
It is a dark reality to confront, but seeing it clearly, understanding the actual mechanics of the machinery, is the only way we as individuals and as a society can actually begin to dismantle it.
Before we go, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought. Something for you to mull over in your own life that builds on the foundation of everything we've talked about today.
A takeaway for the road.
Exactly. We live in a society, a global culture really, that is absolutely obsessed with the concept of love. Our movies, our pop music, our romance novels, everything revolves around the pursuit of that feeling.
It's everywhere.
The ultimate question we are taught to ask in a relationship is, does this person love me? We prioritize the intoxicating feeling of love above almost everything else.
But as Bancroft's work vividly illustrates, love without equality is incredibly dangerous. An abuser might genuinely, in his own twisted internal logic, believe he loves his partner. He loves her in the exact same way a person loves a prized possession or a comfortable home or a loyal pet, but he fundamentally does not respect her humanity.
So what would happen if, starting today, you shifted your fundamental metric for evaluating the relationships in your life? What if you took the intense focus off of the word love and placed it entirely on the concept of respect?
That changes everything.
Instead of asking yourself, does this person love me? You start observing their actions and asking, how does this person handle my autonomy? How do they react when I make a decision they disagree with? How do they treat my anger when I express it?
Are they interested in the reality of who I actually am, or are they only interested in the service I can provide for them?
It's a massive, life-altering paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And it's one that could change not just how we view the dark reality of domestic abuse, but how we evaluate the health and safety of every single relationship in our lives. Next time you're staring at the complex puzzle of human connection, make sure you are holding the piece that actually fits. Heliox is produced by Michelle Brucker and Scott Bleakley. It features reviews of emerging research and ideas from leading thinkers, curated under their creative direction with AI assistance for voice, imagery, and composition. Systemic voices and illustrative images of people are representative tools, not depictions of specific individuals. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other episodes, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.